Welcome to The Rec Room with Mandy and Mio, a podcast about books and the people who write them. Yeah, our podcast. Our podcast.
The podcast.
Welcome to our podcast. It's called The Rec Room with Mandy and Mio, where we ask the question, when does a story become required reading? In each episode, we take popular authors of the day and review selected pieces of work to see just how close these writers get to the sweet spot between mainstream breakout success and traditional literary sensibility. My name's Mia.
I'm Mandy.
And we're continuing our summer semester, which we kicked off last week, with our episode on the Greta Gerwig film, Lady Bird.
Lady Bird. Sorry.
No. This week, we're taking on I first saw this as a film, but it was originally a stage play in the UK called The History Boys by Alan Bennett. And I remember, I was the one who picked this for our summer sem reading list, partly because I haven't seen this since college. And I remember thinking very fondly of it. I actually saw it in high school. I saw the film in high school, and I remember thinking, like, oh, there's something about this that's very profound. And I remember, like, even to this day, I've been really stuck on the thing that Richard Griffiths?
Yes.
Yeah, Richard Griffiths says, like, his character says about the best moments in literature. There's this famous quote that he says, like, the best moments in reading come when you find that a thought that you thought was your own is laid out in the book before you, written by somebody else who's, like, probably dead. And has been dead for many years, and there it is, like, and it feels like someone's holding your hand. I really felt like I butchered that line.
It's fine.
But like that for me was like, oh, that feels like an incredibly profound. Like, I've never like, especially at a young age, as young an age as that. Like, I was like, oh, like, I've never thought about literature that way, but that's very true. Like, that is, and I wanted to see how that idea or that sentiment held up, I guess, in the post-college experience, the adult life, as it were.
The adult life,
as it were. You've seen The History Boys before, right?
I have. I did see it in high school also, like what you said, because I wasn't as attached to it as you were. I had seen it because I had seen it after I found out who James Corden was because the year he won the Tony for One Man, Two Govs, which is one of my favorite plays now. But at the time, I had no idea what that play was, and I had never read it before then. And I was like, oh, this guy seems... Because at the time, that was still when the Tony Awards did segments from plays that were nominated that year.
Oh, right.
And he did an entire scene by himself, and it was like one of the solo scenes, or like monologues from One Man, Two Governors, and it was fantastic. And I was like, this guy's really funny. I wonder what else he's been in.
Yeah.
And then I saw that he was in this thing called The History Boys, and I was like, this sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And I was so young for it. I'm pretty sure I was like 16 or 17.
Yeah. Weren't you telling me
when I had watched it?
You saw this in the Tonys? Was this the same? I'm trying to remember because you were telling me.
No, I saw One Man, Two Govs.
Oh, you saw the actual One Man, Two Govs.
I saw, that's when he was nominated, because if I'm not mistaken, I think you'll talk about later, but like when the History Boys moved to Broadway, they were nominated as ensemble. I don't think they were given individual nominations.
Yeah.
Or if they were, it was probably not for the boys. Whereas in One Man, Two Govs, because he was the first lead, he was nominated for Best Actor, and he won. And he beat his one man.
He was the titular.
He was the titular one man who had two governors. And he beat Philip Seymour Hoffman that year.
Oh my God!
I know, and he said sorry in his speech. I think that's one of the reasons
he should be.
Yeah, because he was like, "This is not how I wanted to meet you." Because apparently Philip Seymour Hoffman was like his idol or whatever.
He's one of mine too.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm telling you this, because I knew that. Anyway, so after that, I was like, who is this guy saying sorry to Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Yeah.
And so I looked up The History Boys, and I was like, this seems like an interesting play. And then I watched the movie, and I was like, oh, I'm too young for this. I really didn't remember a lot of it. And when we were in college and you had actually mentioned it to me that you liked this, I was like, oh, I should probably revisit this.
Yeah.
But I haven't since then, actually. So
it's so funny that you say that, because like I kind of, when I was revisiting it this weekend, I kind of had the same thought, like, oh, I kind of, not that I didn't pick up on some of the things about this play, but like there's a lot about it that I felt like I couldn't really process at that age when I was basically the same age as the history boys.
Yes, exactly.
Not the teachers.
I think that when I was first watching it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna relate because I'm about to apply to university too.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, this is so much bigger than what I am right
Yeah.
now. It was really one of those movies that I watched because at the time too, and I think I've talked about this in the podcast, but I had a major like film era in my high school life where I watched so many movies that I was definitely too young for.
Yeah.
So I had watched like The Dreamers and like and like History Boys and there was another one that I mentioned before.
And, or 120 Days of Sodom.
Yeah, that kind of shit. Like I didn't, but like, but you know, like that's the kind of stuff I was watching, and I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But I had the foresight to be all like, yeah, I don't understand what I'm watching right now. So watching this now, you know, like as you said, it was. I agreed to it because I was like, yeah, I wonder what of it I will know now. Like, it's definitely one of those things that you're not supposed to watch it's not for kids. It's really supposed to, like,
or like, if you do see it as a kid, like, you will see certain aspects of it more than others. Like, here's the thing I thought about as I was watching it this weekend was, like, around the same time, I had also seen Dead Poets Society. And I don't know if I saw it before or after, but, like, it's so funny how, like, Dead Poets Society is very romantic about the arts and, like, the role that it should have in somebody's life. And, you know, whether people have seen it or not, they've at least seen the screen caps of Robin Williams doing the quote about, like, what we live for.
Seize the day, boys.
Yeah, seize the day, what we live for. And then watching this, I'm like, this is a weird antithesis to Dead Poets Society.
Yeah, and is it because they're British?
Is it?
I don't know. I mean, they're more cynical.
Yeah. But like,
no, I'm just kidding.
Like, even
but I get what you mean.
That quote that I presented earlier of the one that Richard Griffith's character says, like, I realized watching it now, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to take that quote with a grain of salt because things don't really quite work out for him. Yeah. And so for him to like be saying that, knowing how he turns out, does come off as a bit of a cautionary tale.
Yeah. And even his ending.
Yeah.
Quote. Which I guess, where he says to, you know, that pass it on and stuff like that. And I think, which is, I guess that when you were you're going to talk about this later when you talk about the differences, but like that's so ironic to me, I guess, now when you know, when you know what happened. I mean, like what's been happening this whole time.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say like that's the one like irony at which I was like, wait a minute, but like
yeah. And I mean, like me too. I'm just saying, na parang I guess because that's also gonna be a difference in the movie. Like they decide to end it with that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll get into all of that later. We just want to get through some context first. The writer Alan Bennett was born in 1934 in Leeds, and he attended Oxford University, where he studied.
Is he still alive?
Yes, he is. Oh. He studied history, performed with the Oxford Review, and then he was there for a while as a teacher of medieval history for several years. The thing that brought him to fame was that he started performing this show called Beyond the Fringe at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 1960.
Wow.
With Dudley Moore.
He's big time.
Yeah, Jonathan Miller and Peter Cook. And that's what shot him up to fame. And right after that, like, he was like, all right, I'm done teaching. I'm done with academia. I'm going to be a full-time writer. And he wrote his, like, first full-length stage play, 40 Years On, which was produced in 1968. Since then, he's also gone on to do The Madness of George III and its film adaptation, the series of monologues entitled Talking Heads, and audiobooks including readings of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Winnie the Pooh. He also did, of course, this play, The History Boys, which premiered at the Royal National Theatre in London on May 18, 2004. The History Boys, broadly speaking, is a play about a group of schoolboys who are about to do their university admission examinations into Oxford and Cambridge. This play was directed by one of Bennett's longtime collaborators, Nicholas Hytner, who, if he's like he's a big NT figure. Like recently, if you've seen the Midsummer Night's Dream, starring Oliver Twist, among other people. Like I always have to highlight him.
Yeah, but thanks for that.
For you. But
thanks.
He directed that basically, and he also directed.
For all the theater nerds there, he's one of the original, if not the original director of Miss Saigon.
Yeah.
In the 1980s. So
and I mentioned like Bennett's play The Madness of George III. He directed as well the film adaptation of that.
Yeah.
Which we found out before we started recording. He got him he was nominated for the Palme d'Or because of that. Like he got
which is crazy.
BAFTAs. He was like the film was like named one of the most important films by the BFI. So
crazy. Yeah. And I also mentioned One Man, Two Governors, and he also directed.
Right. Yeah. So
which is also starring Oliver Twist.
He is a big UK theater figure. Sure.
Yes.
And then of course, like after it premiered at the Royal National Theatre, the play moved to Broadway. On April 23, 2006 at the Broadhurst Theatre, where they did 185 performances before it closed on the 1st of October 2006. The play, I mean, as you'll easy to know, like if you've asked anyone about it, it's critically acclaimed. It won 3 Laurence Olivier Awards in 2005 for Best New Play. Richard Griffiths was recognized for Best Actor, and then Nicholas Hytner got Best Direction. Bennett also received the Laurence Olivier Award for Outstanding Contribution to British Theatre, and the History Boys won 6 Tony Awards on Broadway, with individual acting awards. Since you mentioned earlier about Ensemble, they also gave out individual acting awards to Richard Griffiths and to Frances de la Tour.
Oh yeah, see, I knew it. It wasn't the boys.
Yes. And then you had in 2006 the film version of The History of Boys, which was also directed by Nicholas Hytner, was released in October 2006. And like I was thinking like we could like spend a little bit of time to talk about the differences between the play and the film, because I saw the film again last night, and then I read the play this morning, and I was really surprised because some of the differences like really spell out very different stories, as it were.
Right.
Like,
right.
One thing I noticed that's very different is that the play is a little more conscious about the ethical implications of what happens in this play. So, like, a big part of this play is that there are teachers who are getting sort of into illicit relationships with the students. And, like, even though in the film you have the characters commenting on it, it's in the play where it kind of brings out consequences to those relationships.
Right.
I mean, like, I will say, like, as I was watching the film, like, my initial takeaway was, like, this film has a weird attitude towards sexual relations in academics.
I literally was like, this is too casual.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, to jump to the ending a little bit, but, like, it's sort of weird that the way the film ends is that the character Dakin basically leverages for Richard Griffiths' character to stay in the school, and it's sort of like celebrated in like a victorious way, like hooray, everyone's happy, and I'm like, he's gonna keep going on touching kids, like it's gonna be weird.
Yeah, like what the hell, guys?
Yeah, so
it
like,
was. So you go.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say like that felt weird, like as an ending.
Yeah, that was surprising to me. I was like, oh, that's what's happening. That's what you're fighting for right now.
Yeah.
And isn't it like he the leverage is because of another stupid thing that they had? Oh, because he had found out about Erwin.
Yeah, no, because like what the thing that he gets to use as leverage is that Dakin finds out that the headmaster is also kind of molesting his secretary, and so he threatens to expose the headmaster
because Dakin was sleeping with her.
Yeah, exactly. So Dakin threatens to like expose the headmaster, if he doesn't reinstate his own molester.
his abuser,
into the school. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
excuse me.
This is a lot of
a lot
that they're refusing to unpack too. They'll set it up like that.
I mean, like,
and then you're kind of just
there's one aspect of it that's like, okay, if the teachers being made to let go, like, and the headmaster is essentially doing the same thing. You know, I mean, it's like saying,
why not keep them here?
Yeah, why one or the other? And to which I say, like, no, fire
both.
Have
both.
Them,
like literally,
neither of them are allowed to.
No, all must go.
It's weird.
Yeah, exactly. This is not. So, you were not educators.
So, yeah, it's like at a certain point, I was like, this movie, I'm wondering if it's building up to actually be an ironic ending, which I didn't notice when I was a child.
Right, exactly.
Because,
I didn't feel it that much, though.
Yeah, because because I forgot to say also that one of the big differences as well is that in the play, they go a little further into the future and kind of show how the kids and the teachers turned out. And one of the things that you find out is that the teacher who was basically abusing the students does get exposed after his death. And the student who exposes him ends up making a living out of the settlement money that he gets from that expose.
Yeah, which is
just like
crazy.
Yeah, like, whoa, okay, that
and then Posner also ends up becoming a teacher.
Yeah, what? No, okay, so that's the weird thing, because in the film it says that he ends up becoming a teacher.
Yeah, and then he's like,
no, in the play he doesn't.
Oh, he doesn't.
Yeah, like I didn't rewatch the scene after reading it in the script, but in the script it's really depressing. Like what happens to his character, where he's kind of just living out a lonely life in a cottage that he renovated himself.
Right.
And then he kind of just spends his time online trying to make friends, but they all kind of like disregard who he really is. So it's really depressing. But that's just like one of the ironies that comes out at the end of this play, like and like they emphasize the fact that he's the only student who really took everything who that teacher
heart.
said to heart.
Yeah.
You know? So which is
like he was the best one.
Like, is it really worth it that he, that all the lessons
he remembered
taught you,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And also, I was gonna say, oh god, I had a thought about this. Oh yeah, do you think though that maybe these differences are like also studio notes? Like what if the studio was like, maybe don't make it less depressing?
No, I mean that's what I'm not sure of, because like, I mean, okay, so obviously like when you look at the stage version and as you're reading the play and you're reading the script, now you can like imagine it how, with the limitations of the form of theater, they would have to concede to certain things. But at the same time, like, it gave them the creativity to be flexible about the linear timeline.
Right.
Because I think that's what the film does. Is at least the film is like, no, we're going to do this straightforward. It's going to be as realistic as possible, except until the end, which is the closest it veers towards the unreality of the stage play. Right. And it made me wonder even if like the stage play then was supposed to be read as being the interpretation or the recollection of one of the characters. And I think it's possibly Scripps who's like recalling everything and like now trying to piece it together and like realizing like, oh, okay, this is actually what happened to us. It's weird. Or even Posner.
Scripps doesn't die. He's not the one who dies, right?
No, he's not the one. Lockwood's the one who dies.
Lockwood.
Really? In the play, he doesn't die. That's the weird thing.
So why did they make this choice?
Yeah, I think they just forgot to like address his character.
Yeah, like they were just
really
like,
shafted him. No, but like Scripps is the one who becomes like a proper journalist. But then he keeps telling himself, one day I'm going to give this all up and I'm going to be like a proper writer, which he never does. And to be fair, like if you read it in the script of the play, the whole time, a lot of what his observations are basically, he like records like observations in notebooks, and he's able to intuit the relationships between like, especially Posner and Dakin and Irwin. He like basically monologues it to the audience and says like, not a lot of people say I am observant, but I really am. And like, and like I've been writing things down in a notebook, and I'm gonna tell you what it's all going down.
Right.
So so there are a lot of differences, and I mean like I know we're gonna have a discussion about this later on towards the end of the episode, but I was almost inclined to say that watching it this time, I didn't like the adaptation as much. Mm-hmm. Like I felt that Hytner might be more in his element if he was doing
on
the stage play.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's why,
which I agree on.
Like to be fair, like I mean, like that's where the strength of the adaptation also comes in for me. Is like seeing how well he's able to do blocking and everything.
Right.
But then there's certain things where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that cut, or like that cut, there's a shot here that throws me off. So things like that. There were things like that it made me very curious about the process of like adaptation and figuring out how to.
Yeah, I think about that. I think about that a lot too, because, and I guess I'll say this also at the end.
Yeah.
But like, there have been movies, like where you watch, like okay, we watched recently Wild Mountain Thyme.
Yeah.
And that was an adaptation of a play, but we didn't know that. Did I mention this in a podcast already? Anyway, if I didn't, so me and I watched Wild Mountain Thyme, and that was an adaptation of a play, and it was starring Emily Blunt and what's his name?
Jamie Dornan.
Jamie Dornan. And it was an okay movie. It was really weird, but it was one. But we didn't.
Let me tell you, you will not expect how it ends.
Yeah, you will not expect anything from it.
It's one of those.
Whatever
things,
you think this movie will be about.
Annoyingly, they do set up the ending and the start, but it's not the way you'll ever expect.
Exactly.
It's not like Serenity with Matthew McConaughey and
no, it's not like that at all.
Where that one was almost actually impressive how
it's impressive how they segued into that twist. Yeah. Whereas Wild Mountain Thyme
it just trash.
Was oh geez. And it was one of those, we didn't know it was an adaptation until they said so in the credits. Yeah. But there were significant portions of it where I was like, this is literally, I feel like I'm watching NT Live, Yeah. Like this feels so much like a play, or like I was watching a really high-res bootleg.
Exactly.
And I did, honestly kind of feel that at times here. Mm-hmm. I get what you mean here, and I mean with the History Boys, I get what you mean that like Nicholas Hytner is so much stronger as a director. Like as a stage director, I really agree with that, because we've seen some of his plays via NT Live, and they're fantastic.
Right.
But yeah, there's some ways that he probably let the actors move and how they would deliver their lines and stuff like that. Like I kind of was like, oh, that doesn't feel like something that should have been done for screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then also I was telling you earlier that a lot of the shots were very that time of UK film, a lot of you know what I mean, like a lot like where like if the camera is from below and all of them are you see it and then it pans around and then there's like rock music playing in the background.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm like this is like the same class of like maybe filmmaking as something like, I almost want to say Nowhere Boy.
Yes, there's another one I was thinking of, but I can't quite place.
Maybe, okay, the one I think who does it the best is Joe Wright. Like, Joe Wright kind of goes into the style, but he does it best. Like I have yet to see, as the summer semester will reveal, the Pride and Prejudice adaptation. Yes. But what I have seen, didn't he do the adaptation of Atonement?
Yes, he did. Right. Correct. He did.
That there's something about the style there that is very similar, but he does it better.
Yes, correct. But weirdly enough, he also did Anna Karenina.
Oh yeah, no, but that one is cool. Like the way he does that one is very
where it's literally like
everything's indoors.
Everything is indoors, and everything is
scenes in the end.
Is the train scene indoors?
The train scene's indoors. Yeah.
Oh, right.
I think
the whole like shift he really made it like a stage was pretty cool.
Even like the horse riding scene was like on a stage.
Right, that's right.
But then,
that's right. Oh, maybe we should watch that again.
It's a good movie. But the one scene that I remember registering was actually outdoors, was towards the end when it's Donald Gleason and the girl that he's pursuing, and they're just like out in the farm. And I'm like, oh wow, we finally went outside.
We've been. It's the lawn society. Of the. I was like, this is the lawn of the theater this whole time.
So that one, like, that's interesting, like how he did that one.
But I still think that this, and I'll go into it, I guess, later, but I still kind of enjoyed it as adaptation more than I've enjoyed others. I think so. Anyway.
All right. Well, we'll get into that later. Let's talk a little bit about the cast. We didn't really do this, I think. It's funny that we didn't do this last week. When we easily could have with Lady Bird. But I think...
We kind of did.
Well, yeah, but I think the problem there was that...
They're all really new?
No,
I mean, like, they're all really current people?
Not just that, but, like, I think Lady Bird, at least as a piece of media, is popular enough that everyone will kind of
know who this one, they are. Yeah.
It's surprising to look at the original cast of the History Boys.
Oh, shit. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
So, like, this one, it's interesting to see the cast, the original cast of the History Boys, whom they carried over to the adaptation.
Yep.
And, like, realize, like, oh, this is like a who's who of, like, British film and TV now.
Exactly,
like, even if they're
exactly.
Not, like, the one who we joke are, like, the
12 actors.
Yeah, the 12 actors of Britain.
England.
Like, a lot of them are, like, very common faces. And I've seen almost all of them in at least, like, one other thing. Or so have you.
Yeah.
So let's go through, like, each person in the cast.
Go ahead.
And, you know, where they've been.
This could be like a new game for our movie section.
I realize we could
we can cinephile. I'm saying we could cinephile.
Yeah, exactly. We're building this podcast as we're going along. So the first two guys off the cast, and I'm reading them as two because the play also doesn't really treat them well in terms of giving them a lot of screen time, which sucks because they are the only POCs.
The play or the movie?
Both.
Oh, both.
Okay. Like, even the play, they hardly register. At least the film shows his family. They show Akhtar's family. But in the play, it's just like, oh, no, he's Muslim. And it's like, okay. Like,
gee, he's the Muslim guy.
Yeah, he's the Muslim guy in class. Which, like, that's it. Like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have Akhtar, who's played by Sacha Dhawan, and Crowther, who's played by Samuel Anderson, who are both Doctor Who guys.
Yeah.
Sacha Dhawan... He, most recently, he's known as the guy who's playing the current incarnation of the Master on Doctor Who. But,
nice.
Way before, when they did the 50th anniversary special of Doctor Who, and then they did there's this one special that I thought was better than the actual Doctor Who episode that they did, where it was supposed to be like a dramatization of the making of the first Doctor Who episode.
Which is one of the very first things you and I watched together.
Yeah. That was so good. And he played the director of the first episode.
Right.
And then you have Samuel Anderson, who played one of the companions during Peter Capaldi's run as the Doctor. Danny Pink. Only lasted one season, which was really weird because they spent a lot of time building him up.
Only for him to die.
I was about to do they only built him up, Buttercup, baby, just to let him down and mess him around. Because worst of all, he never came baby when he said.
All right, I'm just gonna let you. I was gonna join in, but then I realized no, he should have this to himself.
Yeah. Okay. Next up on the cast. This one is arguably the most famous.
I mean, he's the most. I think he's the. If there were top four, there are top four, I would say, and he and one of the other cast members are the top two. Because
you mentioned James Corden earlier.
Oh,
James Corden at least has broken out into late night. And so I feel like
American.
Even though he's not so much in, he still is in some films. Like he did that one Netflix
Prom.
Yeah, the Prom. Where
another weird that's a bad adaptation of
right, yeah, but that one, he's now kind of more in the late night realm, whereas Dominic Cooper is kind of
and comedy
in the same lane ever since, kind of.
Yeah. He's still done. Was it Mamma Mia 2?
Yes. Better. I'm almost wait. I'm trying to remember. Did we reference Mamma Mia in the last episode?
We have not in the last episode, but we've talked about it in the past.
Man, I wanted to be Dominic a running Cooper's... joke in this summer semester that we mentioned Mamma Mia in every episode.
Let's just do it.
We're gonna enforce an executive decision. Wow. Every episode during the summer semester, we're gonna mention Mamma Mia in some way, one way or another. Gonna bring up Mamma Mia.
All right. Okay, wait. I'm looking at his movies now. Oh yeah, I totally forgot that he was in The Duchess. That was also another movie that I had watched at the time, and I was like, I'm too old for this. I'm too young for this. Yeah. His last movie was actually Mamma Mia 2.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wait. So what's he been doing?
Because he's been doing TV. No, because he's been doing TV.
That's what I was thinking.
He and MCU stuff. Because he was The Preacher. Well, which ended already, and then he had a mini series called Spy City, which was last year.
Sure, I've never heard of it.
And then So he was doing that's it. And then he has What If coming up.
Oh yeah, that's right.
MCU, What If.
The MCU,
yeah. He was also ironically enough in the film adaptation of Lady in the Van.
Right.
I feel like this cast. Okay, I'm gonna click this cast real quick because there were other people who were also in History Boys.
Lady
that,
in the
like,
Van, which is also
had
Alan Bennett
some people.
Play that was recently adapted.
That's Dominic Cooper. Yeah, so Dominic Cooper he plays. I have a okay. So go.
Dakin,
he plays Dakin.
He's kind of like the most prominent of the history
boys
of the titular history.
Of the titular boys,
because he's the one who's like the troublemaker, but he's also like driving most of the action through his effect, through his like temperament, I guess, and his affectations, like and
his like. What he thinks he should be doing.
Yeah, literally everyone is like moving along to his beat, even if like there are other people who are introduced into the story. Like they kind of like pay attention to him.
Right. You know? Yeah, that's true.
He's like the star pupil, even though he's the rebel.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say Dominic Cooper. I don't know. I guess this is a normal thing for like West End actors, but a lot of these actors also are just regulars on the National Theatre.
Yeah.
Because I know that before the History Boys, his National Theatre debut, Dominic Cooper's, was his Dark Materials.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. So next up, we have Andrew Knott playing Lockwood, who's like sort of the edgy guy in the group. That was my interpretation of his whole character.
Yeah, right? He was. He was.
And Andrew Knott, like the thing about him is that apparently the only thing I've ever seen of his, but I don't remember him in it, was the very first episode of Black Mirror. But you mentioned that he was also in Gavin and Stacey, which I've not really seen a lot.
Which I have not super seen either, but to be fair, a lot of people in Gavin and Stacey.
medyo. That's
including James Corden himself.
Quite deep into it. But yeah, he gets around in terms of like British TV. Like I see like a lot of familiar titles that I've heard of, but not necessarily seen, like Midsummer Murders, Father Brown.
Yeah.
Spooks.
A lot of
Life on Mars. He's Coronation Street. He was in 2 episodes of Coronation Street. So he's been around.
Hey.
Yeah, that's Lockwood. And then you have Samuel Barnett playing Posner, who's kind of the bunso of the group, and he's a Jew. Samuel Barnett now, I recognize him as playing the titular role in Dirk Gently's holistic detective agency. He is Dirk Gently alongside
He is the
Elijah
titular
Wood.
Dirk Gently.
It's funny because he's brown-haired in that show. So I didn't recognize him at first because he's blonde in this.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like something about his voice. Like his voice never quite broke. And I was like,
he sounds. To be fair, this guy sounds like every other British. Like he has this very specific voice that I feel like a lot of British actors who can also sing have.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. I'm trying to think of other people, but when I heard his voice, I really thought that I had known him from something, but I didn't. I realized that, no, I think he just sounds like somebody I'm thinking of.
Right.
Anyway,
so yeah, he's also one of the more, like, prominent, I think, characters among the History Boys. Because him being the bunso of the group, and he has a lot of the emotional drive among the cast. Next, you have Russell Tovey as Rudge. Russell Tovey is also a Doctor Who guy. And his character...
He is also a Sherlock guy.
Oh! Right.
He was in BBC Sherlock. He was in Hounds of Baskerville.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
I sort of believe you.
Yeah, okay.
And his character, Rudge, is characterized as he's kind of like the dumb guy of the group. Like, nobody really thinks he's going to get into any of the Oxbridge
jock.
colleges. Yeah, he is a bit of a jock. Yeah. And he talks a lot about rugby, which he calls rugger, and golf. And for him, like, the way he's learned about the world is everything he's learned around rugby and the golf course.
Yeah, which it sounds like the kind of guy you're trying to be these days.
Aha, no.
No.
Well, let's see. Next you have Scripps, who's played by Jamie Parker, who is like he's the he's a practicing Christian, and it's interesting because the play makes the point that I don't remember this in the film, but his family is not religious, so he's like going through
he chose to be this way.
He became religious in his own accord,
in his own time,
yeah,
like literally by his own free will, which
yeah.
is what
which is
intended
the way,
us, right?
really the way it should be, honestly. And his whole thing is like, apart from that, he's also somebody who's like secretly observant of everybody in the class. Like, he's the guy who is in the play. I mentioned he keeps like a notebook where he's like recording all his observations around everyone, and obviously that hints at his future in journalism. But he ends up being the guy that like everyone kind of secretly confides in without really ever acknowledging it. Yeah. And then sorry. Yeah.
But whenever, so he, the thing about him though is that he's like a prominent, I think, West End. Like, he's done predominantly plays and music. So if you watch, you'll see in the movie that he plays the piano a lot in and he's very good.
He's good.
He's like freaking good.
I will say some of those musical numbers made me really wistful.
Yeah. Me too. I really was like, wait, I just want to listen to this
Maybe
now.
I should
and
put
actually
on
the song
I
literally was like, if you look at the soundtrack, the last song was by him and Samuel Barnett. They recorded the Bewitched
the one
thing, especially for
really?
the one in the credits of the film. They did, because I had thought it was Jamie Bell because it sounded so much like Jamie Bell, who is a English jazz singer, and it wasn't. It was them. It was them all along.
There you go.
And the other cool fact that I found out about him
cool.
is that he originated the role of none other than Harry Potter himself. But wait, you might be like, wait, what do you mean he originated the role of Harry Potter?
You just said Jamie Parker, not Daniel Radcliffe.
I know. Exactly, but this Jamie Parker is Harry Potter in his 30s. When what do you call this? When they had adapted,
when they cursed the child.
The cursed child. When the child was, what if when the West End decided to ask, what if this child was cursed? And he was the titular Potter, Harry, and that's pretty cool considering who literally two other people in this play / film are.
Correct.
But we'll go on that.
We'll get on that. Last student, arguably the most famous member of the
all
cast
of them
is, as we mentioned, James Corden, who plays Timms. Timms is sort of like a crass guy. Like, he's the one who doesn't hesitate to say tits in class.
Yeah,
but he also
or swear.
Yeah, and he's sort of like, I wouldn't characterize him necessarily as the lazy person, but he's the one who can't really like think for himself. Like when Erwin's like teaching his first class and it's like figuring out like what are the ways that we can get into Oxbridge, he's the one who kind of just like, what if we cheat? And then and they're just like, maybe, but but like that's the fact that he was the one who was like who brought that up, says a lot about his character. Then you also have the faculty and staff. The headmaster is played by Clive Merrison, who I'd never really seen in anything else, but he felt like such a quintessentially old-fashioned British guy. You have the one female teacher in the faculty is Frances de la Tour. Well, in the play. The play.
Okay.
In the play. They don't have the art teacher.
Oh, in the movie? In the play they don't have the...
They have her in the movie, but they don't have the play. And she's like the one who's like most invested with the boys among, like, I guess the female faculty. She's played by Frances de la Tour, who was the giant prof of Fleur Delacour.
She was the headmaster of what's the name of their school? Beauxbatons. Beauxbatons. She was the headmaster of Beauxbatons and she goes on to date Hagrid.
Yes, and then you have Hector, who's played by Richard Griffiths, who we all know very well as Uncle Vernon from Harry Potter.
That's
and he's the character
R.I.P.
who, but his is the character who like really needs a lot of trigger warnings because he's the main driver of the the bad side of the very
everything
scary side of this plot. And then the last teacher whose introduction actually kicks off the plot is Erwin, who's played by Stephen Campbell Moore, who we know as the former ex-husband of Claire Foy.
Claire Foy.
And yeah,
I mean, he's done other things with his life.
Right.
He's
Yeah, I mean, but
a very
we
talented
know him as
actor.
that, is that he was
the spouse.
British actress.
Mm-hmm. That's right, award-winning actress.
Yeah. So you have that whole cast, and it's Irwin's. I think we can go straight into like talking about the plot, but like Irwin's introduction is really what kicks off the plot. So the boys, the history boys, they basically find out that they're up for qualifications to enter the Oxbridge colleges, and so they have to spend the whole year preparing for the exams to get into those colleges. Now the interesting thing here is like when I was doing like contextual research for this, and then I was reading the introductory essay to the play, one of the things that, because like I had to wrap my head around the British education system because it is very different
segment
from our education system.
Yeah.
And like one of the weird things that you find out about the plot of this is that technically it's anachronistic, meaning that the exams that they're taking in the film, it's clearly set in the 80s, as you can tell because the film very very like decidedly uses Blue Monday by New Order and This Charming Man by the Smiths to tell you what time it is. And
exactly.
Then, but like by the 80s, these university exams for getting into Cambridge and Oxford were no longer in use. Like they had replaced it with like, I guess what's the more modern version of getting in? But like basically you had to stay for one weekend in the college of your choice. Then they would give you an exam that you would answer on the spot, and it could be about literally anything, right? And so you had to write an essay on it, and then they would give you an interview where they would ask you. It was much like being auditioned or like doing a job interview, where you would like then have an interview with like a panel later, and they would ask you about your answer and try to like pick your brain and see if you would fit into the school community.
Right.
And that was like the experience that Bennett had gone through when he was going into Oxford. And yeah, I mean I don't want to go too deep also into like the kinds of schools. Like they go to a grammar school, which is like a completely foreign concept to us here in the Philippines.
Yes.
Especially as like
we should clarify, like, so a lot of our school system here is very American.
Yeah.
Because they're who basically gave us most of like our educational system.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we had known prior to Mio's insane research about this was what we knew from how much like British TV and film that we watched. And also you had lived there for a year.
Right. But
and you were there for your but you were there for your masters.
I didn't study sixth form, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you were there. Right. So
what were the 5 forms?
I know. Who was it? Do you think you can skip a form?
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't know. We literally don't know.
So yeah. And then they go to a grammar school, which apparently is differentiated from a comprehensive school. And then I looked that up, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of this, but like the idea is that grammar schools oh shit! I've already forgotten.
No, you can do it.
Wait, I just know that there's one that they don't pick you on the basis of your academic achievement. I think that might be comprehensive schools, whereas like grammar school is considered like a scholarship school, where like they pick you on a certain basis. Like if you're an academic achievement student, then you have a big chance of getting into a grammar school. And like some of the schools were like fee paying and not fee paying. So in this case they really had to make the school in the play a non fee paying school so that it could have some of the characters be working class.
Right.
There were a lot of details where I was like, oh my god, like this guy really thought about the British education system, which gave me homework. Like
literally.
Right. But also that informs some of the not the stakes of the play, because they are like a grammar school that is not medyo well performing. The headmaster feels that there's a pressure for the students in this particular batch to get into Oxbridge because then it's going to raise the ranking of their school. And if they can get the ranking up, they can probably get more students, more funding. Very administrative reasons. Like the headmaster is really not like a scholar. He's an administrator, honestly.
Yeah.
And like his whole
He's just some guy.
motivation is basically like based around that. So the pressure's on that. And like the boys, for what it's worth, have also been like convinced of like doing the Oxbridge exams, but like right away the new teacher Erwin kind of like tells them like, you don't really actually want to go to Oxbridge. You only want to go to Oxbridge, and this is also something Hector says, you only want to go to Oxbridge because other people want to go to Oxbridge.
Yeah.
And if that's something you really want for yourself, you have to consider the fact that other kids who are probably more privileged than you will have the advantage of having gone to some of the places that these books are about. Like, they'll have gone to Rome, and they'll have seen like the relic that is the foreskin of Christ.
Yeah.
Weird example.
Yeah. And then they all just start talking about about who hasn't been circumcised. Yeah. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, very, very strange. But like, like he's saying like, and I think we can characterize here a bit of like Erwin's teaching style, is that he's encouraging the boys to basically adopt a mode of revisionism. And I mean, like, I will say that outright, even though there are like a lot of like asterisks that you can attach to that. Like Erwin like tries to clarify, no, I'm not advocating necessarily for you to tell history that's not true. I'm just advocating for you to like tell it from an interesting perspective. Like his whole thing is like at the start, like a lot of people will see Henry VIII as a monster for what he did to his wives, and for England as a whole, like ruling it the way he did. But what if you could argue that he was actually good?
Like, what would be the points to that?
Or like there was one where like in the play, when he's doing his TV program, a more egregious example is that he argues that actually Pearl Harbor was not the fault of the Japanese. It was the fault of President Roosevelt, who like parang like,
I mean, yeah,
sure, but then
dude,
that has its repercussions, which are explored later on in the play. But that's like his whole angle, and it's like exciting the boys because up until that point they'd only been taught by Hector and Mrs. Lintott, who both like advocate they don't intersect with each other because they teach very different subjects. But Mrs. Lintott in particular, because she teaches the same subject, history, as Erwin, her style has been more about like the objective stuff. Like, as long as you get it right,
memorizing stuff.
Yeah, as long as you get it right and you can organize your thoughts, you should be fine. There's no need for presentation. And Erwin's like the radical opposite, where he's like, no, presentation is like the main key. You can bend the truth a little as long as you make an interesting point, because otherwise they're just gonna read. Your essay is just gonna fall into one of the hundreds of other essays that will all say the same thing. Right. Hector, meanwhile, he's the one who teaches the class called General Studies, and it's basically just like their free time. It's almost like their advisory class. But they learn a lot about like high culture and low culture, pop culture, songs. They do films.
Yep. And practice French.
Right. Yeah, let's spend some time on that.
Okay.
Scene,
so literally one of the, like, if not the third scene in the whole movie, which I think is also one of the more iconic scenes of the play, is this whole scene where they're practicing French during, I guess, general studies.
Yeah.
And they're trying to practice their grammar.
Yeah.
And they do it through scene building.
It's so funny because like I don't know when I found the English version of that scene, like the English text for it. But the whole time I remember like being like, oh, I don't understand French, so I don't know what's going on in the scene. Which sucks because there is an important theme that's introduced in that lesson.
Yes, it is, and it carries over.
Yeah.
But like for me naman, I guess I should have mentioned this earlier also, but like one of the reasons then I wanted to revisit this movie in college was when we were in college, it was the 50th anniversary of the National Theatre, and they did like this whole special where they basically did scenes from all their iconic plays over the past 50 years, and The History Boys was one of them. and the showcase for History Boys was the French scene, and they don't put subtitles in the movie. Which I think is great.
Yeah.
Because obviously when you're watching the play, you don't get subtitles either. And the
then
whole scene is...
It's assuming also that the British audience has taken French in
has
school.
taken French. But then also part of me is like... well, I think, and you mentioned this also about the movie version na parang you feel like it should look rowdier because it's a all-boys school.
Oh, yeah.
And in the play, in that version, in the 50th anniversary, it's really more... It's chaos. Like, it is much louder, and it is... So I think even if you can't speak French, it's super funny to you because it's halos slapstick, because they're just doing so much physical stuff, like hauling each other around. And then obviously their timing is so great when the headmaster has to come in and he has Erwin with him and etc. etc. So but like to have that as a really early scene is so great, because you said this earlier also when you were talking off mic, but like it really shows you how much they enjoy the teaching style of Hector, and it kind of makes you go on, you're on his side for most of it because of that, because you're like, they clearly are learning, they clearly know what they're saying, and like, he's also clearly looking out for them, because when the headmaster is asking why is Dominic Cooper not have his pants on?
He covers
because
for them.
he covers for them, because in the beginning they were literally like let's practice by pretending we're in a brothel, and then when
you're gonna get a prostitute, like,
and so we just have to talk in French, and that's the whole exercise. And then and when the headmaster comes in, Hector says, actually it's World War II. And
you're in Belgium. You're in a Belgian hospital.
And you're in a Belgian hospital, and people are dying, and that's why he has his pants off, because he's about to get amputated. And so that's so great. Like and from that scene on,
like,
you're
from
like,
that point, you're like, oh, he's much like the Robin Williams character.
Yes, he's going to be the Robin Williams. Yeah. And it makes you be like, oh, he's gonna be so different from. I mean, this Erwin guy is gonna be so different. And
like he's the gonna be. Man.
Yeah, he's gonna be the one giving them a hard time. And then it turns out, kids, as of all of life, nuances happen.
I really like that. I really like that turn of phrase. As it were, nuances happen.
Yeah, that's what happened. And reader, oh boy, were there nuances.
Speaking of nuances, I will say the one thing that I found like thematically important in that scene, even though it's in French. So if you watched the film or read the script but could not get through the French, this is the cheat code to it. In that scene, they're basically studying the subjunctive mood.
Yes.
Which is basically the might have been mood.
Yeah.
And that grammar becomes like a recurring theme throughout the play, because they keep talking about things that might have been. And in fact, like the purest version of Erwin's teaching philosophy is really going in the subjunctive mood. He's like trying to teach his students to imagine what might have been, because it alerts them now to the consequences of what did happen. So, but then at the same time, it also applies to the things that don't happen in the events of the play. Like towards the end, there's like a date that gets set up that never happens, but now the characters who were supposed to go on that date start to ask themselves, well, what if it did happen? What might have happened, but it didn't,
Right.
What were the things about that? So that's the whole lesson, is that they're trying to like apply the might have been mood in like those situations in the brothel or in the Belgian hospital. But it gets lost. So there's that. What happens after? Well, that's when they get introduced to Erwin. And like right soon after, Erwin does their first classes where he's telling them all your essays are boring. You're making the same points that everyone. You're just thinking conventionally, and that's not gonna do if you try to go into the Oxbridge colleges, to study history, especially.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks a lot also to, I guess, maybe like the privilege of the British education system at the time, that they have this way of looking at studying history, which isn't just in terms of becoming like like at least in our sense, like if you see somebody who's studying history, there are a lot of ways of branching out from just history that can help you go into different fields of industry that aren't just history. I mean, of course, you can still go into history as like an art historian or a public historian, or like somebody who manages like documents or archives, that sort of thing. But like here, they really saw studying history as like, oh, you're gonna be the person who writes history books, and like you'll become part of the discourse, which up until that point is really just in the books. So to contribute to that, like that is what they see is like the role of the people who study history in the Oxbridge schools. And it speaks as well to the teachers' own educational histories. Like none of them had gone to Oxbridge except apparently Irwin, or so he claims. But all of the others had gone to
Durham.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Durham. Okay, so like Lintot says that she went to Durham, and like right away, when I heard that, I was like, "But Durham's not a bad school." And I'm saying that purely because I'd watched this recent season of University Challenge, and Durham was kind of my team.
Were they winning? Oh they were your team. That's right. That's right.
Far.
Yeah,
like, I was so and like they had like I'm gonna just do like this very quick University Challenge segue. They got far into the game, but then they lost in like the semis, I think. This is the one sport I'm into.
It is a mental exercise.
Yeah, but like the one memorable moment, and everyone who hasn't seen University Challenge but has like geekish tendencies, like please watch it for fun. It's so fun. There was a moment involving the Durham team this year. I told you about this, where it's like
yes, go.
It was a question involving like what do they call like the frost that comes in the air. It was like a specific word relating to frost and air, and nobody in the team knew it except for this one guy. And the way that it goes in University Challenge is that the person who answers normally in like the straightforward rounds per team, the bonus rounds, is the captain. So if somebody else knows the answer, they have to tell it to the captain, or the captain can nominate them. And so the question was about that. Like, what do you call the frost in the air that forms when so and so and so? And then the guy to the right of the captain, he was like kind of laughing, and he looked at the captain and he just says, "Whore." And then the captain was like so confused because she wasn't processing the word HOAR. She was processing WHORE. And so for her, she was just like so taken aback because she thought like, is he calling
me like right now in the middle of a show?
And then he's like laughing because he realizes his mistake. And he's like, no, seriously, it's whore. It's whore.
Just say. And then if you look at the clip, he literally says, "Just say it."
Yeah, just.
And then
just
she literally, she's like, whore. And then the host is like, "That's right, HOA."
He says like, I'm not joking. That's the answer. I'm not just saying it. That's really the answer.
That's really it. That's like really it.
Such a good moment for me. I was like, Durham, I hope you win this championship. Ultimately, they lost to a team where the captain couldn't even remember one of his teammates' names in the semis. That was their memorable moment. I was like, I'll never forgive them for that. Anyway, that's my Durham tangent. You guys did good this year. So all the other teachers went to like,
if you're listening,
they all went to different schools. Like Durham, I think Hector went to Sheffield, and then even the headmaster went to Hull. So like none of them are like Oxbridge people, but then like they really want this also for the kids because they know like it would be good for them, right? And then it speaks also to their various insecurities about coming from newer universities and not from the prestigious status universities or legacy universities, as it were. But that also motivates them to like be rigorous about their preparations for the boys and like helping them to like find their way and figure out what they're supposed to do. It's also in this like early part of the play that they're unfolding, as we mentioned, the scandal that's been carried out by Hector with the boys this whole time, which is that from time to time Hector will let one of the students hitch home with him on his motorbike, and then while they're driving through on the motorbike, he's gonna reach behind and like molest them essentially. Which has been going on for a while, and like the boys like don't really like talk about it. They're reluctant about it. They know that there's something wrong about it, but they never like really bring it up.
But they never, and they joke about it too.
Diba? Like
them, they say it in passing, like it's just another thing that happens to them.
And I think that's a crucial thing about them as characters, because in this phase of life, I think they're still at that point in life where they don't really realize that teachers have inner lives yet.
Yes, that's true.
You know, that the whole thing where you see your teacher and they're just like a terrifying figure or an eccentric figure.
Right.
But they you don't really think about them as having a past or having hobbies.
Yeah.
You know, which, like, I mean, I don't know about you, but like for me that was like such a revelation when I eventually like started to see teachers in malls and be like,
teachers go to teachers hang out here.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, teachers have hobbies, like, or teachers play in the band, you know.
Yeah.
Or even like I myself, when I became a teacher, like,
when you were a teacher,
I was obviously very conscious of my own inner life, but I could not, you know, guarantee myself, and that's something that I think is addressed in the play, is that one of the things that you have to assume is that the students know nothing about your inner life, and you have to try your hardest not to tell them about it.
Yeah.
It's like, shit, true.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, that also, like, kind of is in the same period where they're exploring their sexuality. And, like, some students are, like, dealing with it in normal ways.
Yeah.
Others,
some are more sure of themselves already.
Yeah, like, they can for sure, because he's been sleeping around with the school secretary, with Fiona. Like, everyone's, like, sort of looking up to him. But they also, like, mentioned that Raj is kind of also having sex on the weekends, still making time to study. He's very responsible, honestly.
Yeah, he's a good, I was gonna say, like, he's a good kid.
Yeah, and like Posner being like the bunso of the group, like, he's the one to have aged the slowest. He is kind of like lost and like locked out of like this world of sex that his contemporaries are in.
Right, and it doesn't help that he kind of knows that he's, you know.
Yeah,
he's gay.
Yeah, he's discovering, like, he's like realizing, like, oh, I actually have feelings for Dakin, but I don't know if Dakin would ever go for me. Like it starts out first as like envy, like, oh, everything that Dakin is, I kind of want to be. And that's when you realize, like, oh, maybe I actually admire Dakin. And like, even Scripps is like,
and then it's like, oh no,
and like in the play, Scripps is like, actually, I think he loves Dakin. Like,
it's
like, he doesn't know it yet, but I think he loves.
But I'm pretty sure he loves him. Yeah,
and that's incidentally the same kind of admiration that Dakin applies to Erwin when Erwin starts like becoming a part of the group. Is that Dakin looks at him and it's like, the way Erwin is so confident is everything I'd like to be in life. And then at some point he's just like,
and then eventually he's like, oh no, but what if
confidence?
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, what if we bone down?
Yeah. And like, you know, he also like tries to like start working his way towards there. So I mean, like, in its own way, the scandal kind of gives, I don't know, Dakin like some sort of license to feel like, you know,
it's possible
for me to look at Erwin as like a sex object, right? And you know, that is tricky, my friends.
Yeah, indeed.
that is not you know, it's not good.
Yeah, it's not good.
But you know, that scandal is like eventually uncovered when in the movie it's like a random lady who's like a traffic enforcer who sees it. In the play, it's the wife of the headmaster.
Oh,
so it like that's even worse because it's like the wife. It seeps into his family life.
Yeah,
that now he has to deal with this scandal. But he basically tells Hector, okay, at the end of this term, you're gonna retire. So we're just gonna like brush it under the rug. You're gonna retire.
The fact also that he says you can wait until the end of this term.
Yeah.
Instead of like just letting him go immediately.
Yeah, and that's also where Hector starts to realize that he's kind of wasted his life as a teacher, which is a really, I mean, like that's.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sympathize with him that easily, but it is also the sort of tragic part of his, you know, like,
inner life.
Going away from like Dead Poet Society, it is a bit more like another teaching film that I really like is Mr. Holland's Opus, where it's about a musician who tells himself like, yeah, I'll just teach for a few years and then I'll write my great American symphony, and he ends up spending his whole life teaching. Yeah, you know, and it is in its own way tragic. It's like, why did he waste his life there? But yeah, and so they agree to like let him stay on until the end of the year when he'll quietly retire. But then the headmaster also uses that to like leverage teaching hours with Hector so that Erwin can get more time with the boys. And this sort of leads into them having there's a big scene where they have a shared teaching session where Erwin and Hector are teaching at the same time. And it's there that their different methods of teaching collide. But also like their ways of looking at what education is for comes into contact. Right? Because on one hand, you have Erwin being like, look, right now, education, all that is important for is for passing the exam. I'm not here to teach you anything more than how to pass the exam. And Hector's whole perspective is like, oh, what literature is really for is it's going to teach you the antidote to life. And James Corden, for what it's worth, says one of the most profound things in the play and the film, which is that, sir, most of the stuff that poetry is really about hasn't really happened to us yet.
Oh, yeah.
Diba?
Yeah.
And
which is...
and like, Hector's like response to that is like, yeah, but when it does happen, you will have the antidote.
Yeah. At least it's there.
Yeah, it's like,
ready for you.
It's like tricky. So yeah, and then like they kind of spend the rest of the play kind of preparing for the exams. It's. I mean, like you have that shared teaching session. It's there that like the limits of like Erwin's teaching philosophy is tested because he has that whole thing about talking about the Holocaust.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Which
Sorry.
becomes,
Yeah.
Hard for Posner to talk about because he's a Jew, and they're talking about it with such indifference,
and distance.
And like he's like Posner's like practically warning them, like, hey, if you're trying to explain the Holocaust, at a certain point you can basically give it a pardon because you can explain it away, and that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? And even in the play, like that sort of becomes difficult for Posner because once he takes that information home, his family gets mad at him, like his uncle hits him. So like clearly, like like Erwin is also like going in over his head teaching the students the way he is teaching.
Because he has no understanding then of like, because in the play, I mean in the movie, when they're in that scene, the Holocaust scene, he really tells them like, guys, history is so, like, the point of history is that it's done.
Yeah,
that's basically what he tries to tell them. Na parang that's why he thinks it should be indifferent and should only be used for passing exams, because in the end it's never going to be useful to you anyway because it's stuff that's already done.
Don't you feel like that's a very Western way of looking at it? Diba?
Yeah, yes, it is. And it's a very oppressive way of looking at things. Because it's so easy. Because if you keep looking at it, and they make this very good point, na parang, if you keep thinking about history that way, you're just gonna never learn, and then things will just always repeat itself, and then you'll never truly understand what went wrong in the past. And they have that whole bit in that Holocaust scene where as you were explaining to me earlier, where Deacon says that the difference between losing a monastery and the Holocaust is that I didn't lose
that's
potential family members. Yeah, I didn't lose potential family members or actual family members in a monastery.
Yeah,
and then basically, what's his name? Scripps comes to his defense.
Yeah,
but Erwin basically tells them that they're two in it. And that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I'm literally like, what do you mean two in it? He literally just said that Posner just implied that he potentially had grandparents who died in the Holocaust.
Exactly,
and this is set in the 80s.
Yeah.
So the Holocaust was only like
30
years. Like, that's so early. So parang... I don't know.
Presumably around the time, like essentially Hector lived through it.
Yeah, that's right. Hector lived through, and that's true. Correct. Hector and all of the old teachers did. So parang, I don't know.
Yeah. So like,
and you're right. It is very Western because.
Yeah, for them to like say like, oh, we can distance ourselves from history because that's the whole point of scholarship, is having that kind of like cold distance at which point you're able to state the truth. But
but then that's not true either.
Yeah, because the truth is something that you live through also.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Yeah, like
exactly.
I think there was a thing that I was like seeing that. Okay, on one hand, like you have Hector being like this perversion of the Robin Williams character in Dead Poets Society, because he obviously gets into the situation of abuse where he abuses the students. But then I also realized, I was like, in its own way, Erwin is also kind of abusing the students by making them think this way, and it's in its own way, they both represent
a cycle.
Two perversions of education, where Hector is like a perversion of the education of the heart, where he teaches them like literature is all about consoling your sorrow, but it doesn't. He never looks at it as it's supposed to show you the way to the truth or the way you should act in society. Like it's not responsible for the way you act in society. It's only responsible for your sorrow. Whereas like Erwin's like teaching him like you're not beholden to the truth, and it's the perversion of the education of the mind, because he's telling them the way you should act is to just present yourself. The truth doesn't matter as much as how you present yourself. And like I mean, ostensibly that's a response to the way he like came up, but then at the same time it's also not the way these kids should be learning, because they're very impressionable. They don't know what the world's gonna be like.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's consequences.
Yeah, when will you learn that your actions have consequences?
Yeah, and that's why again, like it's such a shafting of the POC characters that they're also not like in this play that much, even if they're just there, because like I mean, presumably they would have something to say in that discussion, not so much about the Holocaust, but like about other things that have
about
happened.
history. Exactly. Literally, there's a bit where one of them, one of them doesn't even know that the other is Muslim.
Right, exactly.
Because he can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I mean, like UK's treatment of like the Middle East, essentially, and South Asia.
And Africa.
Yeah, and Africa. So really, like, like these guys have something to say, and they're not really like into it, which is like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but like,
which I wonder if Alan did that on purpose or what.
I don't know. I mean, like, I would say that his preoccupations were elsewhere based on what I read in the introductory essay, but like, he was not really thinking about that at all.
Right, makes sense.
Okay. After that, what else? Well, everyone like gradually finds out about the abuse situation. Posner becomes like more hopelessly in love with Dakin. While Dakin like tries harder and harder to pursue Erwin.
Get Erwin,
which is.
But he's still sleeping with Fiona.
Yeah, and like, but like to his point, like he was saying that the thing that got him to sleep with Fiona, because at the start of the play, he's unsuccessful in convincing Fiona to sleep with him. But the only thing that convinces her, two things. The first thing is that one, she manages to tell him, like he talks so much about Erwin that she gets sick of it, and she's like, "Let's have sex na lang."
Yeah, right.
That's one thing, and the other part of it is that he's learning Erwin's methods to the point that he can now use it in his like dealings with other people, basically with Fiona. Mm-hmm. Like he convinces her to have sex with him by like just like impressing her, like bending the truth so much that she's like, okay,
that she's
let's go.
like, oh, okay,
basically that, right? And like even to the point that he's even able to elicit information from her. Like,
and that's how she admits to
that the headmaster is also trying
abusing
to
her.
Abuse her. Right. So you have all these things like coming to the fore, and then basically what happens is that they do their uni exams. All of them get in.
Yeah.
All of them get in.
Literally all.
Posner
2
gets
on scholarship.
And like Posner ends up going to Posner and Dakin end up getting into Cambridge both. Yeah. So like Posner, the thing about Posner also is that his motivation is that if he gets into Cambridge, he'll be able to follow Dakin, and maybe that will raise Dakin's estimation of him. Yeah. Spoiler, it doesn't.
I was like, it
really does not. While Rudge is interesting because like he gets
the way he gets in.
Yeah, because he gets into Christchurch.
And through Legacy.
Yeah, and the thing is like basically he did everything that they told him to do, but none of them were as effective as when
as
he mentioned
him
that
saying,
his dad used to work at that college.
yeah, not even mention. They asked him.
That's right.
They literally were like, "Hey,
It's
are
like fated
you
from the
related
start."
to Bill?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so crazy. And like, so he was like, "Yeah, it's my dad." And then they were like, "OMG,
Yeah,
well,
like,
guess what?
You're the kind of person we're looking for, and we'll tell you right now, you're in."
Yeah, hey, and like, so and that's the thing too, is that he is the first one to know that he gets in,
and he doesn't tell them.
but he doesn't tell anybody.
Yeah,
and he doesn't even join their party.
yeah, partly because of his resentment. Like everyone thinks
to the
so
system
lonely of
too.
me, and if I tell them now, they're gonna patronize me, which sucks.
Yeah, which is kind of what happened, because when he tells the teacher, si Mrs. She also is in she's also in disbelief.
Yeah.
And he's like, exactly my point.
Yeah. So you have all those things. The other thing is that significant thing to note in line with the theme is that Posner, the way he gets into Cambridge and gets his scholarship is that he plays the Irwin card where he distances himself from the Holocaust.
That's
And then the college examiners, the college dons are like, "Hey, good on you that you're able to distance yourself, a Jew, from the Holocaust." Like that's the stuff that real historians are made of. Which is like, oh god, like that's the worst possible outcome.
Literally, I would never,
grab
like
it.
Then I don't know, because then you're just be another white historian, know?
Exactly, yeah. Which, just really kind of like disillusions them altogether about
exactly
system. Right. So that really sucks. What else? What more is there? You've got Dakin basically doing that whole thing where he threatens the headmaster to expose his personal abuse of Fiona unless Hector gets to stay at the school, which is a really weird,
which is such a weird twist.
They celebrate it, and then then
he convinces Irwin. Yeah. This is where I have so many questions.
Yeah, yes.
Like what? So he's like, so they're like, "Hey, for old time's sake, let's ride on the motorcycle."
No, but look, here's the whole thing. It's like, wait, were you referring to the motorcycle or the date?
Oh, I was referring to the motorcycle, but the date too. Yeah. Okay, so you go first.
The date, because the date happens before the motorcycle thing. But the whole idea is that after they get their results, they can confront Irwin, and he's like, "Hey, so you lied to me about where you went to school." And I mean, which is no surprise, because that's literally the philosophy you've been preaching the whole time you've been here, and it worked on me. Now that I'm about to finish school, he basically propositions him all the way.
Yeah,
and it's like I was just so I was as uncomfortable as Irwin was projecting himself.
Yeah.
Because there's a part of him that's in his inner life is yes, of course I would. But then at the same time, it's
exactly.
No, this is so
he's like, "No, I'm literally your teacher."
Yeah, this is so inappropriate. This is so immoral. And what Dakin basically tells him is but that's what you've been preaching this whole time. The truth doesn't really matter. What makes this different than me lying on my university exams? Yeah. And Irwin's just
and then Irwin's like,
I guess.
Bested. Yeah, he's like, "You're right." And you're right, that is also stupid.
Debated me, so yeah. But he's really goading him, "Why are you being so fucking careful now?" Which is dude,
it's too little, too late.
You haven't even graduated yet. You just found out
you literally just found out you're going to school.
But of course that never happens because as you mentioned, eventually when Hector is victoriously reinstated to the school, he basically offers to do one more ride.
Which is such a weird offer.
Because they know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But the headmaster is the one who intervenes.
Yeah. And then Irwin rides with him instead. And
Irwin has never really, I guess, ridden a motorbike before, so he doesn't know how to balance the weight. And it causes a crash that kills Hector, and it puts Irwin in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm. In the play, is he in a wheelchair?
Yes, he's in a wheelchair in the play. Okay. That's part of it becomes sort of his persona as a public historian. It's whenever he's on TV, people are kind of "Oh, he's a wheelchair historian." And then
so he's paralyzed for life.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, because in the movie he's not.
Yeah, that's
he
the thing.
just had
that's another
broken
difference.
leg.
The other thing is that like the part of the reason the date doesn't push through after the crash is that they cannot stand looking at Erwin in the wheelchair. And like I kind of read that as like, oh, he was really like thinking about. I mean, like he says it. He says that much to Scripps that he wanted to do it as like a sign of gratitude. Which, like,
right.
You remember that exchange where, like, Scripps is like, you know, if I was grateful to a teacher, I'd buy him a subscription to a magazine. I wouldn't give him like, access to my dick.
Like, yeah. Which is that's a great line. Like, smart. Yeah, I'd subscribe to The Economist for you for a year.
Yeah. But but the reason is that he didn't. He didn't think that he's gonna have any emotional attachment. It's probably gonna be a one night stand.
Yeah.
But he probably thought that if he went on the date with Erwin in the wheelchair, it would be like not just more obvious, but like he would also like be thinking more about like he'd be awa for him. He'd be sorry.
Yeah.
And it's like so that never pushes through, and the play kind of ends on a note exploring their respective pasts. And this is the thing I wanted to say is that I realized this time I was like, oh, all of them are kind of depressed. Like they all have very depressive endings.
Right. No one had a really good. Even in the movie, I guess they try and say that Posner and Scripps had the happier endings, but
in the play, Posner has like a really bad ending.
The worst, yeah.
They don't even mention Lockwood, but like Akhtar becomes a headmaster. Crowther and Lockwood become magistrates. The one that was funny to me was like James Corden's character, Tim.
James Corden was like, I do drugs on weekends.
I run a dry cleaning chain and I take drugs.
And I take drugs.
Like, I don't know if that's necessarily what I call a happy
and I was like, at least he's consistent.
And then Dakin becomes like a tax lawyer who makes his living on like telling lies. Like he basically lies in court. I don't remember if this was in the film. In the play script, it implies that he's kind of like a profiteer of the Gulf states, of the Gulf War.
Oh, wow, no, not at all. So, they don't mention that at all. Wow.
They make his character seem even more egregious in the future. Yeah. And then Rudge becomes like a home builder.
He shows up in the Panama Papers.
Yeah, basically. Literally. Rudge becomes like a home builder, and like it's kind of implied that his houses are low quality, but he's like his only justification is like, but they're affordable, so for the first time buyer at least they can say they can own a house. So what if they suck, basically?
And he bangs wives.
Right.
That's his
thing. So all of them live out very like low lives. Or like very immoral lives, and you can tell like, oh, that's because of the effect that literally these teachers had on them.
Yeah, exactly.
That, like stayed with them their whole lives. And
even if they went to like what's his name, Rudge in the movie, Rudge even says that one of the reasons why he can get people to trust him and his work is because he says that he went to Oxford.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, it's funny because like I remember, if you remember the ending of Dead Poets Society, like that one also is not like an all sunshine and happy ending. Because like you have Robert. What happens to Robert Sean Leonard's character?
And then Robin Williams. He dies, and then Robin Williams.
Gets fired for it, right? So like it's like sort of like the system rebelling, but in against like Robin Williams. That's how it's angled. It's like they still don't want you to study the arts. But then what this ending here in the History Boys is saying is like, look, even if you study the arts, or if you study history, or if you go to Oxford or Cambridge, there's no guarantee that you won't turn out a shitty person.
Yeah, because if you're gonna be a shitty person, and you do these shitty things to other people, that's the pass it on. Yeah.
Well, okay. Like, let's talk about that. Yeah, what's the interpretation of that?
Yun, na parang he was like saying that I want you guys to learn to pass it on. And they never do because the only thing that was passed on to them was trauma.
Yun nga. Okay.
And like, even if you say like, like what we said earlier, na parang Posner, in the movie and in the play, it's both emphasized na out of all the boys, he's the one who remembers the lessons the most.
Yeah.
And in the movie, he ends up becoming a teacher too, and well, maybe this in the movie he decides to he's the one who passes it on the most because he becomes a teacher, and he tries to be a good one because he is not gonna abuse his students, and it's very clear na he's strict about that in himself. But then you mentioned that in the play, yun nga, that's not like he's not a teacher at all.
Lives alone in a cottage that he renovated with the money that he got from the expose settlement.
Yeah,
and then he
just, the fact that yun nga, he exposed his teacher.
Yeah, like for money after he died.
After he died.
Yeah, and then there's a part where he tries to expose Erwin, and he's trying to find out like what Erwin did with Dakin, even though Erwin didn't actually do anything with Dakin. But like he goes to Erwin wearing a microphone, saying like the journalist won't print it unless you actually say something incriminating. So it's like, oh shit, this guy's desperate.
Yeah.
So like his is the saddest.
Yeah.
In that way.
Whereas in the movie, it's not.
Yeah, the play is he's more the most cynical, I think, about this whole situation.
Right.
I mean, like what you were saying, my interpretation of the pass it on was something like that. Is that his whole idea was how to become a teacher without becoming a teacher. It was like being able to share like a deeper love for art and literature without getting into the situation where you waste your life. I mean, not that teachers waste their lives or anything, but like that you end up like
but if you want something out of it,
right? Yeah. So yeah, this this is depressing.
Oh, I guess we didn't say it. Yeah, so the thing about did we mention that Lockwood dies?
Yeah, Lockwood in the film. It's not in the play, but Lockwood in the film, he dies in the war. Or he dies in he's like
in a war,
and he doesn't even get shot by an enemy.
But it's not even like
fire.
Which is so
so it's really sad.
Literally, what is going on?
Okay, I think ultimately, like, our takeaway of this is like, how do we like reassess, like, I guess, I don't know, our experience, because we went through like a pretty like heavy liberal arts education school.
Very that, like, really and I would say it was very it is a very liberal arts university with I wouldn't say similar teachings.
Sure.
But like I mean, obviously no, sige, go. What were you gonna say?
I think at least for us, there's a little more self-awareness, hopefully. A lot of the teachers, I think, had a lot more self-awareness about, like, you know, their own reckonings with, like, I guess, the academic system and its administrative nature, but also, like, the parts where art and literature and even history, humanities in general, are actually, like, joyful. Like, the parts where they can become like a salve to life. But I think, if anything, this play kind of like argues that it isn't necessarily a universal solution.
Correct. Yeah. Right. That's true.
And kind of like
which I think is like it being more half realistic and half cynical at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
Because like you said, like there was that when you were much younger, it did hit that one line about, you know, what is it about?
About like the best
if you see a thought,
reading,
or when you see a thought that you had in a book that from somebody who is probably long dead, and it's like someone's holding your hand. Like that's very romantic way to put it, but then, you know, as an adult, you're kind of just like, no. In reality, all of us just have similar thoughts, but then also, in another way, it's like because it came from such a horrible person. The context completely changes, and it's not some like. Would that be a lesson that you want to stay with you coming from a person like that?
I mean, like, I hate to sound like sentimental and like nostalgic, but like, don't you also just miss it sometimes? Like,
I do miss school. No, 100%. You and I talk about it all the time.
Not necessarily missing school, but like, at least like missing that kind of freedom to play around with ideas,
to do stuff,
or like play.
Absolutely.
Like now,
be in a classroom.
I mean, obviously, we don't resent like the kind of reading work that we do here for the podcast, but like I have thought about it a lot lately. That wow, I do miss reading for no reason. Yeah, like with no pressure for any reason. Like just like reading on its own. Like I haven't been able to do that in a while. and like the time for leisure has like minimized itself, especially as this pandemic's gone on.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a lot to do with the pandemic too. Right. And I super understand. I mean, like, I still get, I make sure to still read fic and on my downtime, because like that's easier. But you're right, I haven't really read a book for like my own downtime in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think also, as the thing about this movie is, or like this play, and this is gonna be really dark, but like I think it's about, I think going back to the pass it on thing and what I just said na parang about keeping things with you that parang in context maybe shouldn't be kept with you because of who passed that kind of information to you, or that lesson to you. I think that a lot of people hide behind the school system.
Sure, yeah.
To commit like all these abuses and stuff. And I think maybe now in retrospect, maybe in the beginning of this, I was like, wow, the movie is so maybe too casual about it. But then now I'm thinking, or is it being like super realistic? Because that's how passive a lot of it was. That even when certain things were being revealed, parang a lot of people were only angry in the moment, and then after that it was very hard to upkeep that anger unless you yourself were very close to the situation. But even then, there were a lot of people who were like Sinadaken, where they actually were the victims, but they would just rather not deal with it ever. And that's not necessarily a sign of the times either. Like, even if this is set in the 80s, like that's very much how people are now.
And I mean, like, it's also like, I think one of the nuances that the fact that they're all boys, they're all men.
Yes, that's very true.
And it gets even worse if this was like a co-ed situation,
a co-ed school, like or all girls school.
Yeah, it's like even more.
Yeah, absolutely
egregious.
Yeah, exactly. And I think going back to like the play version of Posner versus what happens to him in the movie, parang it's good na he took the best practices and was like, but I'm never gonna like attribute it to him, I guess, and be like, I'm not gonna be like him. Like, I got this from him, but I'm not gonna be like him. That's very powerful in its own way. But like, it's also very sad that the actual or like the canon version is literally the AU where everything goes wrong.
Yeah, so again, like it begs the question of like, who made that decision? Was it the studio note? Or
exactly. Was it who?
No,
maybe I have regrets about how. Maybe he was like, maybe I should. Yeah, because because I think in movies, I feel like it's much harder to get away with that kind of ending. Because it's more widespread than theater is. So parang I feel like maybe that's why they probably made that kind of decision, to have at least one of them have a decent ending, and then maybe not mention that Dominic Cooper is what do you call it, benefiting from the Gulf War.
Basically. And like, the other thing is like it's 2 years from the time it starts in Royal National Theatre to the time when the adaptation
the movie comes out.
And like the movie basically comes out simultaneous to when they're about to start doing
on Broadway. Yeah, that's interesting.
So I wonder
that's
if like
very rare
that
too.
Time like really gave them that space to be like, no, you know what?
Let's just change it a little bit.
Maybe we've changed our mind. Like, what do we want to say with this thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can close the book on this book. We've said a lot
on this movie. We have.
I feel like I've learned a lot about this play/film again this weekend. Mm-hmm. You want to do course listing?
Let's do course listing, baby.
Okay, so I would slot this play/film. I mean, either way, like in this case, I'm like kind of disregarding No, I'll disregard the genre differences here and say that in general, I would recommend this material for a course on the philosophy of education. Very broad course, but I think it begs a lot of questions about what is education really for in the modern day. And if you look at the context of like the real world circumstances, in the case of this play, it's happening in the midst of the Thatcher government, essentially.
Yeah.
Like Bennett, when
we forgot to mention that.
Yeah, like Bennett. Well, she's in the backdrop, sort of, but like Bennett. The whole thing is that Bennett wrote the play without really thinking about the time. But in the film, it's more explicit that it's set in the 80s.
It's the 80s.
Set during Thatcher times. And, like, if you're reading it here and thinking about the 80s, you have to be conscious of the fact that they're saying this whole thing about distance and everything. They're essentially saying it simultaneous to the time that Marcos is still in power.
That's very true. That's literally, right? Exactly. That's what I wanted. I was going to say, it's literally some of the worst times of like working class England and the worst times of everywhere, because it's Marcos in power here. The USSR is basically about to break down.
The Cold War is like an all-time high.
The Cold War is literally just the peak of it all. Watergate.
Things are happening.
Yeah, exactly.
In the 80s? Wasn't it in like the 70s?
Is it the 70s?
I mean, like, I've been watching For All Mankind, which happens in 1969. It starts in 1969. Nixon's already president. So it isn't long until... But I don't think it's
70 something. You're right. I take that back. Reader, I take that back. But because it's Reagan.
Right. Yeah,
isn't
so
it?
Reagan, which is its
so
own
literally
thing.
that's its own can of worms. And here we had good old Marshall.
Yeah. So really, what is education for? Oh yeah. And I mean, like, if we're gonna say Marcos, like the whole fact that they ended up, sending their kids to the UK to study, but not finished.
That's literally it. These kids probably. This is set in Manchester. Exactly. So parang.
I mean, no, but Oxbridge really. Oxbridge,
I mean, Oxbridge. That's true. So maybe one of them could have been schoolmates with Blang Blong.
With Dagan probably.
Yeah, Dagan went to school with Blang Blong.
Anyway, that's that.
When he went to college for 2 days.
So what does education do in this day and age? What's it for?
Exactly.
Is the educational system just broken and obsolete, or can we like reform it into something? These are questions that like philosophy of education becomes like, like now special topics. What do we do now about it? The state of education.
Yeah.
What is
exactly? And I think it's interesting too. In retrospect, I mean, if you were to have that kind of class now, and we're in the middle of the pandemic, and you always see these tweets about kids who are always like, well, what is the point if I'm just going to be home?
Right.
And there's no end in sight, especially for our country. And I always see a lot of kids who are so upset because they want to be in school. Yeah. But it feels so meaningless because they're just online and then they don't have a life afterwards,
Yeah.
And yeah, so like parang that's a good one. I like Philo of Edu. That's a good one.
What course would you put this in?
Mine would be just I would categorize this in a film class where there could be like a specific segment within the semester about adaptations. Okay. And like how like adapting, a certain text that was like either from a play or a book and then making it into a film, obviously. But those would have to be two different things because I feel like adapting books or text into a film is so different from adapting something that is already quite visual, and then just having to restage it as a film thing is one whole other monster. Right. And for History Boys in particular, I feel like it's so interesting because I think it's one of the rare instances where they get the actual stage director to also direct the film. And as we've mentioned earlier, Nicholas Hytner has done that for most of his film work. Yeah. It's basically just film adaptations of his plays that he's already done. But this is one of, in my opinion, I said this to you earlier and you were shocked by it, but I actually do kind of enjoy this movie as an adaptation compared to a lot of other stuff that I've seen as like musicals or plays that were adapted into film versions. Yeah. And I think being able to like study the kind of the nuances of development in a film class in that way is quite interesting. I feel like we don't talk about that kind of stuff enough because I feel like a lot of people always complain when a book adaptation is really bad, but you never really like ask why, you know? Yeah. Like everyone's always like, oh, Harry Potter 2 was like the best adaptation of it, but like Harry Potter 4 was the worst, and no one really like what goes into that, you know? Yeah. Whereas with plays, like for example, earlier we mentioned The Prom. Yeah. The Prom was not a good adaptation of that musical. Like Netflix totally like shredded it to pieces for no reason. But like theater kids could tell you why. Like theater kids will 100% tell you why it was horrible. Yeah. And so I feel like if and also because it reminds me of how we had this reading in film theory that was about filming performances and how that makes it its own thing. Sure, because we have that whole concept of how with live performances, it's even if you're playing the same set, even if you're playing doing the same script every single day, wearing the same costume, the same makeup, singing the same songs, it's always a different performance because it's a different day. Yeah. But like if you were to film one day and you have the opportunity to rewatch that performance every single time, it's the same thing. Like nothing will change. And in that way, that could sort of like justify it as a film. Mm-hmm. But then a lot of people would say that it's not a film because it's not staged on like it wasn't filmed on a sound stage. Yeah. You know, it was filmed on a stage. Blah, blah. Like there's all those kinds of nuances that I think. Yeah. And I kind of think I'd be interested to explore more.
I think also that like with the fact that I really like that you mentioned that Hytner moving from stage to film, because he does have to deal with not only like a different sensibility but a different language there, where now he has like, different
absolutely.
tools at his disposal. I mean, like with the stage play, you're just in a static. Except for the movement of the set, you're in a static perspective. But now he has to like deal with the possibility of, should I close in on somebody's hand movement, or should I close, which is like the stuff that great film is made out of.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, should I pan around the classroom? Yeah. What if I don't pan around the classroom?
And that's why, like, I mean, like, and not to necessarily put down what you said, but like that's why, like, for me, I felt like it was like more. I mean, like, it was more jarring to see the filmmaking now because I could see him making decisions that felt not very clean, but that doesn't make it less interesting as an adaptation. Like, one example I could think of was like there was that scene where Hector is saying that whole thing about the best moments in reading, and there's a part where he kind of like reaches out his hand to demonstrate what he's saying, and it cuts away from a reverse shot of Posner and Hector to a long shot between them, which you've never seen before. And it kind of jumps out right away because you haven't seen that perspective, and so it feels like he only set up that shot just to show the connection between them,
the two of them.
So that felt like, it feels like that shot was wasted a little bit because he only just did it for that. When there must have clearly been more captured in that take.
Yeah. Right. Correct.
But I can see how it fits into an adaptation. Actually, there are adaptation courses. I audited once a whole course on adaptation.
That's cool. It was a lot. I've never. Oh yeah, I'm sure I'd love to do it. Yeah. You know, because I think and that's one of the reasons that I said it. I guess is because when we were doing film and film theory, it was more about like the basics of filmmaking and what goes into it and stuff. And then film theory is a lot of just criticism and like stuff I was saying earlier. But so I've never really had to think about adaptations and stuff. Yeah, because and especially as like a theater kid. That's always like a topic. Yeah. I guess like the ongoing joke for us right now is the Wicked movie. Sure. Because they've been trying to make one since like 2007. Yeah. And it's still not out. And I kind of don't want it to exist now at this point. So, I think also like just going back to like how you mentioned that this movie came out before they even went to Broadway. I think that's also kind of a rare instance because usually movie adaptations, like for example, the Rent movie came out a year before this. It came out in 2005.
Okay.
But Rent had been very popular all throughout the mid-90s up to the 2000s.
Yeah.
And up to now. So parang, and they also decided to use the same cast, which to this day I still don't understand. But like, so it had been like around 10 years since it had premiered on Broadway.
Yeah.
So that's a very long stretch of time. And as I was saying, and even now, like as we're recording this, In the Heights had just premiered the other day. Right. Yeah, and it's been over 10 years since In the Heights premiered on Broadway. Yeah. So I think it's quite interesting that the History Boys was able to get enough traction that they did it in between transitions.
Yeah.
Or in between stagings.
And it helps knowing that like these actors are all like people who have aspirations for film and TV. Like
that's yeah.
Like I think to jump off what you were saying earlier about the film performance reading that we had in film theory, like, you know, it now strikes me that all of these actors now had the potential to do multiple takes on a line delivery.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
Like, when they're on the stage, they have to wait for when they deliver the line in the performance to alter the delivery.
Yeah, exactly. They can do it tomorrow if they think of it on the spot today. Then they'll do it today. But then
there is a difference with their performance.
Yeah, whereas they can ask to do it on the spot while you do. I think we talked about this also in class before. Na parang they have that opportunity to just be like, "Hey, can I try it this way?" And if the director says you can, then you can.
Yeah.
But yeah.
History Boys.
History Boys, man. The boys of history.
What if there were boys? History Boys.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do Sports Corner.
DC's History Boys. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. The History Boys will return in Endgame.
And yeah, well, I mean, technically, they did. And it's called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, okay?
Well, I mean, like, Dominic Cooper will return in Agent Carter. Probably.
He will.
Okay, sorry, yeah. Let's go to Sports Corner.
Let's do it, Sports Corner, baby.
Rec. Room.
Okay, so, Sports Corner. Here's what I've learned this week. It's literally something that we just did prior to recording. We watched the finale of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and you mentioned there something that I had not known, or like I had known, but I hadn't really like processed the information for the longest time. But the guy who plays Batroc,
that's right. Here we go.
That's Batroc the Leaper.
Batroc the Leaper is his official villain name.
He's played by an athlete, Georges St-Pierre, who is a UFC fighter, is what you mentioned, and I had never processed that until now. Like, oh, that's why his skill. That's why he's so good at fighting.
That's why his and he does his own stunts and stuff.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense now. And so that was the thing I learned. It's like, oh yeah, there are like actual athletes who kind of like branch out into entertainment,
right?
Which was like interesting to me because like UFC is not like WWE, where that one is like really deliberately staged as a personality entertainment, and all the people there basically work as actors, building their own characters and everything.
Right.
I mean, like Georges St-Pierre strikes me as somebody who is like really just like an authentic fighter.
Some dude who
worked up the ranks, right?
Yeah.
So my question for this week's Sports Corner is related to that. Is like, why do you think athletes branch out into other forms of entertainment? And like, how do you feel about it?
So ironic enough that you asked this now because like last week we were talking about basketball and Space Jam 2 is coming up.
Yeah.
So I think it depends because there are a lot of good athletes who are also really good entertainers. Like I will give it to LeBron because LeBron is quite funny. He's very good. And I think I kind of get why it's not, if he was just an athlete and they made him, because there have been times where you see athletes do cameos and stuff and you're kind of like, oh, he's not good.
Yeah.
Like there's someone I'm thinking
of. Well, that's what they said famously about like Space Jam 1. It's that when they get the dream,
Space Jam
like
1.
all of Michael Jordan's contemporaries there, like none of them seem to know how to act.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of a joke too, because like sometimes then if they go on like SNL or whatever, they kind of just stand there and they read their lines like this. Conan, like I don't know why I said Conan for SNL, but yeah, it's kind of just like, hey, Andy, that's not cool. Like that's what they'll sound like. But but for people like LeBron and Blake Griffin, who are really funny, I don't know. I can't speak about the other. Like I heard AD's gonna be in Space Jam 2. I wonder if he's funny. Like I think it's okay. And Batroc too. He's lucky because he gets to do most of his stuff in French. So I wonder too if that's like a thing.
But where are these guys doing these like personality performances?
They're taking classes.
That a casting director is like, oh yeah, Georges St-Pierre.
Well, I was gonna say to be fair, naman to roles like Georges St-Pierre in the MCU, they really needed somebody to that stature, I think. Like, I think it would have been more difficult to have to train an actor to do the kind of work that he was doing. Right, and it's not really a lot. It's not, unlike training somebody like Chris and Sebastian, who are going to be doing this for long periods of time. That's different as opposed to having somebody who's already very trained and you can just use him for a couple like he was hours. In like
3 episodes.
He was in 3 episodes of this, and he was in like exactly 6-ish minutes, I would say, of the Captain America Winter Soldier film.
In which he did basically the one thing he's really good
at. And where he did his whole... Yeah, which was flip a lot. He flipped so much. He kicked. He leapt. Oh yeah, he leapt because he is the leaper. And he has that whole scene is iconic, and he's pretty good. I think he's a decent actor.
Okay.
I think he's pretty okay. Me and my boyfriend have this running joke that he does acting just to get extra, like, we say pang tuition ng anak niya.
No.
like that's what, because it's like he doesn't need that because he was world champion multiple times.
I would think.
He does not need to be in the MCU.
He's so popular that I know who he is and I don't watch
exactly. So parang that I think also, we're at this point of entertainment where it's, or like, I guess life in general, where it's okay for you to want to be more than one thing.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that, like, and I think especially for athletes, maybe most of them had no idea that they could be two things, because a lot of them really just stay athletes for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
But a lot of them do end up retiring early and become entertainers.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people too who retire and become sports anchors and stuff. So
I'm also thinking then if like there are any other like famous examples. Like, has there ever been like an athlete who became like a pop musician, or like he started a jazz career?
A musician, Jackie Chan.
Wait.
He was like a for real martial artist, and then he was like, what if I acted? Right. And then he also was like, hey, guess what? I want to sing jazz. And then he did. Man, so he's one. I'm trying to think. Kobe studied classical music.
Oh, for real? Okay.
And he did. He was very passionate about like piano.
Oh.
And that was like, and that's part of like one of his legacy things is his, I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Mamba mentality.
Sure, yeah.
But like it was really this whole thing that parang, that's also one of the reasons why he retired when he did, because he was like, it's time for me to discover more things about myself. And so he made a movie, he learned how to play piano, and he wrote scripts, I think, that are, I don't know if we'll ever see the light of day. Yeah. But like, I think it's that's kind of why I think, because media has formed into this thing where people just start putting athletes in things not just for jokes, but also because they probably have some kind of like a distinct role to play. Like, again, I don't think they would have gotten a normal actor and then trained him just to be Batroc. Right. I really think they purposefully were like, we need to find a UFC fighter. I think also what's her name? There's this other like actress. Well, she's an actress now, but she was also, I think, a UFC fighter, and most of her roles now are like combat stuff.
Yeah.
Like, like she's probably in the military or she's a spy or stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. That's making sense to me. I also just want to
Yeah,
clarify, like, the reason I was asking this question is not because I think like athletes can only ever do one thing, but it's sort of curious to me that like you are already in a position in society where you have both the popularity and like it's lucrative enough
And
that you
money.
can survive on it,
Yeah.
and then you still
Yeah.
choose to like break out to like something
Exactly.
else where
Right.
like other people have had to
And-
work up the ladder to get to that
Exactly.
level of popularity.
Right.
So it's
I think
curious.
and going back to Blake Griffin, I guess I mentioned this last time, but he also is a stand-up comedian on the side, and he's I think he's quite good. I don't think he's very good. I think he's pretty good, and I think he's really funny.
Yeah.
If you were to watch his interviews on like Jimmy Fallon, he's really funny, and he has commercials too where he's quite funny. And also I think this is making you saying that reminded me of the Blank Check episode. Here we go again. Of when they were talking about used cars,
Right.
the film Used Cars, and they had that whole segment or like this whole section of the episode where they were talking about how a lot of directors did comedic stuff so that they could eventually go into serious work, like Adam McKay, for example, who was known for Anchorman and all these crazy Will Ferrell movies, but now he's really doing hard dramas.
Or even
my
favorite is Demi.
And Demi, right? That's right, Jonathan Demi. And so I think maybe the same sentiment could be said for athletes in some ways.
Right.
Na parang maybe I wouldn't say na obviously they trained their whole lives to be athletes, but I think it's okay to assume na they know they have a personable face and enough personality to try and do more things that aren't just cameos. Yeah, that's my thing.
And that is our sports corner for the week.
That's our sports corner. That was really long. You can cut some of that out.
Nah, don't worry.
Rec. Room.
Okay, so next week on Sked, we have our first novel, which we had previously announced in our Falcon in our MCU episode. I don't want to say the whole thing again.
You don't have to.
But in our MCU episode, we announced that we are doing 3 novels this summer. The first of which is The Idiot by Elise Batuman. A novel that, again, I have not read in a while. It's been a few years since I read that novel. I remember having good feelings about it. Hopefully, it holds up.
Yeah. Agree.
We'll see.
I have never read it,
Yeah.
so this will be exciting.
I have I have ways to qualify why I thought it was a good read, but they may not be the deepest reason, but you'll find out next week. Till then, if you like this episode, we spent a good time. I think we had a good time talking about this. We spent like a good amount of time talking about this. If you like this, please remember to give us ratings, reviews, or subscribe to
That's true.
this podcast. We like them 5 stars. Again, we challenge you.
We
If you
do like
don't
them 5
like
stars.
it, give us 5 stars anyway, and then tell us what we can do better because we'll read it.
Yeah.
We're also on Instagram and Twitter where we do our announcements. That's at the Rec Room Pod, Rec spelled REQ. We are also on YouTube where we do highlights about of some of our episodes. Did we announce last time that we did the bar talk one? Do you remember if we did that?
I don't know. I'm not sure if we did, but you can bring it. I'm sure it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah,
to
well, okay. In case
bring
I
it up
haven't,
again.
in which case, like, if I did, and I find it again in editing, this is like a reminder to myself to like cut it out, to cut this part out. But like, we did recently a whole thing where we tried to like generate like an ASMR white noise video of a bar, and the specific circumstance that you're in a bar, but you overhear 2 people preparing for their Sally Rooney book report a bit too loudly. So you overhear their entire book report at a crowded bar, in case you miss bars. And that's on our YouTube. So, I don't know how to end this. I guess, like, bye.
Yeah.
Should we just say bye?
Should we just say, I think we should.
We're just going to say goodbye. And as always, goodbye.
Thanks for listening to The Rec Room. This episode was edited by me. Our artwork is by Mandy. Our theme song is 64 Sundays by Twin Musicom, which is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution License. Check out more of their music at www.twinmusicom.org. For more updates on The Rec Room, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Rec Room Pod. Rec spelled R-E-Q.